Hey everyone, welcome to 6 Degrees of Associations. As always, I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, David DuBois, president of DuBois Group, and other things, which we will get into. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Lucas. My pleasure. On a beautiful sunny day. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's actually 85 degrees here today.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you how frigidly cold it is here because it's just going to make myself jealous, or maybe I just did it. But welcome. Well, David, tell us a little bit. This is a show about associations and DuBois Group. Connect some dots for us. Tell us a little bit of history, how you found associations, and why you're here.
Well, please, if I rattle on too long, just hit the pause button and do one of these T for timeouts. But I'll try to be as brief as possible. I had the pleasure of going to Michigan State Hospitality School, hotel school, and then went to work for 13 years for Sheraton and Ritz-Carlton hotels, and had a wonderful experience in all the different properties and corporate headquarters for Sheraton in Boston. And the way I got into association management is probably not unique. You know, coming from the supplier side of the hotel industry, hospitality, sales and marketing, selling, meetings, conventions, trade shows, tourism. I was very involved with PCMA, Professional Convention Management Association, when I worked for Sheraton headquarters in Boston. And at the time, he rest in peace, Roy Evans was the CEO. And I was working with PCMA. We were doing a basic meeting planning training program sponsored by Sheraton, pretty self-serving. And we got to be good friends. I worked with Ed Polifka, his senior VP of education. And we had probably 15 or 20 of these around the country where we would bring meeting planners in who were entry level, and we would teach those ladies and gentlemen. I would co-present with Ed Polifka, the education director for PCMA at the time. And that's how we got to know each other. And then he called me on a Friday night, I'm literally having pizza and beer with my dear wife. And he goes, "David, Roy Evans," with a Birmingham accent. "David, you think about coming to work for me?" I said, "In Birmingham, Alabama? Really?" He goes, "Oh, it's nice down here. Can I fly you and Nancy down?" And long story short, he hired me as senior VP of all revenue, membership, marketing, sales, Convene magazine, advertising, all the top line revenue focuses, Lucas. And my wife and I absolutely loved living in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm not being disrespectful. We still have a lot of friends there. And it turned out to be great. And that's where he said to me, you like association management?" I said, "Yeah, so far so good. This is great." It takes a lot of the business skills, sales and marketing skills, management skills, leadership skills, visionary strategy, all of that good stuff. And you're running a business. And it happens to be membership and a board of directors. So he said, "Well, I want you to start working on your CAE." I said, "What's that?" "Certified Association Executive." And so before I left Birmingham after 6 years and came to Dallas to work for Meeting Professionals International to continue my association career, he was fortunate enough to support me, Lucas, to get my CAE, and also simultaneously my CMP, Certified Meeting Professional, which is an Events Industry Council certification program. So I'm a CAE. As I got older and did other things, I was blessed to become a fellow of ASAE, which I'm honored to be. And then there's also, I'm a fellow of the CMP. I don't know if that means you're old and you just kind of eventually, they give it to you. You got to pay an extra $200. That's good association management revenue generation. And then I'll quit the association scenario in a second. I moved to MPI, Meeting Professionals International in Dallas. I've lived here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area since '96. And I have enjoyed that 4 or 5 years there. And then I went to the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau as president and CEO. And what was cool about that is I was back in my hotel sales marketing promotion world, and I had a board of directors, a little more complicated. The mayor wanted me to know that he was my boss. City council members, although they're not because it's a contract with the city for marketing services. And then my board of directors, and then we had members of the CVB. So I stayed in that nonprofit, because this is C6. I stayed in that nonprofit world, Lucas, for that many years. And then I went over to IAEE, the International Association of Exhibitions and Events, where I enjoyed that for 11 years as their CEO. God bless, got us through COVID somehow with a great board that I helped to lead and a great team, great staff. So I went from being a supplier to being tapped on the shoulder, take my association career forward. And now about 15 months ago, I've retired to start the DuBois Group, LLC. I'm shying away from helping anybody run a nonprofit association, although I do volunteer at a food bank and I kind of help advise their board. But I'm having fun. I got one client that's going to be a 3 or 4 year project. Other than that, volunteering, playing golf, trying to be a better husband, father, and grandfather. Oh, and golfer.
All of those I feel like are a lifelong journey. What I've learned here is if you get the call on a Friday night over pizza and beer, you better answer it. It could change your life.
Yeah, it was totally random. I said, Roy, how'd you get my phone number? He said, well, I called your boss, Rick Danielson, at the time, and he gave me your number. And it was my home number because back then in the early 80s, my phone was like this big and it was heavy. And I left it in my car. And all you had was home lines, right? So somehow he got my home line.
There's no better compliment than being called up, though, and being sort of recruited out of a place that you didn't apply for. And I think that goes hand in hand with everything that, David Grindle, who had referred us to you, said about you being a leader and a mentor. And one of the things I think that speaks to that you sort of, I'd say you're well ahead of your time in this regard, was the idea of personal brand. Tell us a little bit, how that came to be, what you think of as personal brand, because today it's kind of a buzzword, but what I read from you really kind of stuck with me, and I think has played true through all of this and kind of makes sense on how those dots got connected.
Well, that's a great lead in. I'll share a brief story. When I was sales manager at the Sheraton Washington in D.C., I sat on, and you'll know this being a D.C. area guy, I sat on the committee for Springtime in the Park, which was the trade show back in the day in the 80s, the 80s and 90s until ASAE and GWSA merged. And I'm sitting in a committee meeting one day, and I'm sitting next to an association director of meetings and conventions for her association. And all we talked about for probably a year is, I remember her son's name is Seth. And we talked about my kids, because Nancy and I had young kids at the time. And that's all we talked about. I never solicited her for business. I never did anything. It was a personal bonding. It was a personal relationship. Talked about what her husband did for a living, et cetera, et cetera. About 6 months later, I get a phone call from her. Hi, Debbie. Hey, David. We've outgrown the hotel for next year's convention, and it's in the Sheraton family, so it's going to be a little easier to make a move. Can you find dates for me? And so I came back, and I wasn't even her sales rep. We had a file that she hadn't even been called on. Shame on us.
Yeah.
In a long time. So I asked the director of sales, can I take this over? Yeah, go ahead. It turned out to be 3,000 or 4,000 room nights within a 12-month window, short term. And that came because I didn't sit down next to her in 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 committee meetings and sell her. We were just talking. We became friends. So she trusted me. I guess she liked me. I liked her. She's, we're still friends on Facebook. And that's how I kind of said, this is the best way, because a lot of salespeople make promises that they can't deliver on, and then there goes your reputation. I don't care if you're at the Dewdrop Inn for 3 years and you go work at the, blah, blah, blah hotel down the road, or, that bad reputation carries it. So I've always been about personal brand. And I'll finish with the fact that I'm on the Michigan State Hotel School Alumni Association, and I go back to Michigan State and teach, or have in the past, a meeting planning exhibition trends kind of class for an hour on campus.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk to the students about. You're a sophomore in college, you're a freshman in college, whatever you are, work on your personal brand. By the way, it's more than your resume. You can fill in the blanks on your resume. God bless, let it go. But if your name is Mary Smith, 10 years from now, what do you want Mary Smith to think about you as you're applying for your next job and they're checking references? Mary Smith was a rock star, is a rock star, trustworthy, follows through, whether you're in sales or management, association management, it doesn't matter. It's, Lucas has a brand, David DuBois has a brand, and that's how I got through what is getting close to 50 years of working at the Dearborn Inn in Dearborn, Michigan, and now, having this little DuBois LLC group trying to make a little extra money for some fun trips with my wife. Personal brand.
100% true. Even my career not quite as tenured as yours, but the truth is, regardless of what you're selling, they're buying you first, and what you sell throughout your career changes, and they buy you. And there's kind of an adage that my partner says often is, people want to do business with who they want to do business with. And how you do it, is just as important as what you do.
Yeah, I mean, the client I have now, it was Sunday evening as the Masters golf tournament in Augusta was being completed, and I was watching it on TV, and I get this call from this gentleman that I was on a board with years ago, and he goes, "Hey, DuBois, how are you?" Let's pretend his name is Smith. "Hey, Smith. What's up?" He goes, I wanted to see if this is still your mobile number. I looked you up on LinkedIn. It looks like you started a consultancy. I need some help. Long story short, it's probably going to be a 3 or 4 year, 8 to 10 hours a week for 3 or 4 years, because it's a big construction project for a major city convention center and complex and the whole thing. And that came out of personal brand, friendship, sitting next to him at a board meeting several times a year for this organization that I was a board member of. Same thing from my 1980 relationship with Debbie. So it carries with you. And you know what? I was fine to start, collecting Social Security and kind of ease in and start tapping into my retirement fund. And all of a sudden I got a little gig.
It works. It carries with you. I've been to, we talked about ASAE kind of before the recording. I've been to a lot of those annual meetings, a lot of the other meetings, and there's people who come up and it was, there's a transactional aspect when you go to an expo. Some people go and they're there to find out about your services. And I still stay connected with those people who we ultimately did business together. But I really stay connected with the people who, as you said, we didn't talk business. We met at the hotel bar, after the show closed, and we were all just ready for a cocktail or a beer. And then we ended up sitting there for 4 or 5 hours until it closed and talking about everything. But those are the people who I have their cell phone numbers. I could call them right now and talk business.
Well, Lucas, you're probably the same as me. You wish you had a recording of those 2 or 3 hours sitting there at 11, 12 o'clock at night, because we solved a lot of problems.
Not to share with anybody but myself.
Oh, we solved a lot of problems. And then the next morning, you can't remember what you solved, even if you only had one glass of wine.
Well, certainly after 10 years go by,
those true.
Memories get very positive. Yeah. Well, one aspect of that personal brand, operating, with honesty and integrity. I mean, that's obviously an integral part. I mean, we kind of all come to these crossroads. Do you have any of those moments where, you've been tested and and tried in your career?
Oh, absolutely. When, first of all, everybody's in sales. If you're the membership director for the American Association of Wonderful People, you're in sales. If you're the governance director for the American Association of Wonderful People, you're in sales because you're selling policy concepts. Whether you're the CEO of an organization, and I've been blessed to be a CEO 4 times, and I'm sure we'll touch on it, but I always made sure I surrounded myself with people that in their particular skill set focus, whether it's marketing, governance, sales, finance, membership, that I had the best of the best. At IAEE, I'm going to brag a little bit on, not on me, but on the leadership that myself and my team were able to execute. When I worked at Meeting Professionals International, I worked with 4 or 5, 6 folks, 1 guy and 5 ladies. Guess what? They're all at IAEE still. And Marcia Flanagan is the CEO and president who worked for and with me. I say for and with me for the better part of 14, 15 years. And then when I retired, she was a finalist, got the job. We got together and it was kumbaya. It was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And that is quality relationships, team building. And you know what? They didn't ask me. I didn't have a vote on whether she would get my job. She got it on her own because she earned it and she deserved it. And that's the kind of leadership that she's all about, because guess what? Her number 2 now, Lisa, her director of sales, Karen, her VP of events, Jason, guess where they all worked with Marcia and I? At Meeting Professionals International.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the network. You touched on network. That's the network that you build because people want to work for and with you and make you successful, which makes your organization successful.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, there is an element of individually, everybody can have their own skill sets. And I think every seat has specific requirements for that make you successful in the seat. What's been your experience of sort of gluing that, that whole room together?
Well, I know this is kind of overstated. Be a good listener. I wanted my team to challenge me. If I had, hey, I have a great idea. Okay, let's hear it, boss. So my team used to call me, and still do when I see them at different events. Tell us what you think. And then I throw it back on the whole team, basically a senior management team of 7 of us, I believe. And 15, 20 minutes later, my idea was either rejected or it was enhanced. Ideally, it was decent enough because I vetted it in advance with a couple of my senior staff members, that it was enhanced. And if I thought, let's do A, B, and C, they say, no, let's drop C. Let's add D, E, and F. And then at the end of it, we all go, that's fantastic. Now I have to sell it to the board. And then what's the business plan and how are you going to generate revenue and what's in it for member value and all that good stuff that your audience listening to this and watching this are, dealing with every single day. Member value, member retention, thinking about what members need that they haven't even thought about that they need. That whole strategic planning scenario, Lucas, that I know you do for and with your clients.
We do. Along the same lines, the similarities keep coming, Dave. We have something, gracious candor, right? That's the statement that we would use for that feedback. And you had said before the show, I say the same thing all the time. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I would rather you tell me my idea is terrible and it sucks and we should throw the whole thing away it doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes. And the other thing we say is the best idea wins. And I think a lot of what you stated is just sort of similar in the same vein. Let's really wrestle over this thing and be open to other people's ideas, but also open to other people's rejections.
Well, and I can share with the audience, because you asked me to try to share a couple nuggets. One of the greatest lead-in lines that I learned over the year from CEOs that I worked for, association CEOs that I worked for, or other leaders is, may I suggest for your consideration the following couple of ideas. And now I use it with my wife, and she's now doing it, Lucas, with me, and we laugh about it. And she'll go, David, I've been thinking about this, about the house or grandkids or whatever. Can I suggest a couple of things for us to talk about? What a great lead-in. I learned that from a CEO that I worked for probably 15 years ago. You're leading in, and then most of the time it comes back, well, you asked me, may I suggest, what are you thinking? And then you throw out your idea. Lucas throws out his idea. Nancy throws out her idea. And then you start the conversation by, instead of saying, I have the greatest idea, and don't tell me otherwise because I am right. I'm a narcissist, and I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. That doesn't work. It doesn't, especially with young, wonderful ladies and gentlemen who are managers. My daughter is 42 years old, and she just got a brand new job, and we did some role playing, and I helped coach her a little bit, and she, I didn't tell her what to say. I just guided her on talk about your strengths, but do the history on the company that she ended up getting hired for. And she can stay there now. It's a big company in the Dallas area in our industry, and she could stay with this company for 20 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, the lead in that you mentioned, it's gracious, it's respectful, and it's open-ended. And those are very difficult things to dismiss, if done right. I use, I'll just say, with my wife sometimes, what are the chances we could consider?
There you go.
That's what I do.
Very similar.
Well, yeah, the chances that we're considering something are never zero. But sometimes she'll say, well, okay, that's very good chance. We can consider that. Or she'll say the chances are pretty low. But,
right.
but not.
I'm involved with Michigan State Hotel School. 100th anniversary is in 2027. So because of my background, I got invited to be on their board, and I think I'm treasurer now. We are launching a $20 million capital campaign to build up the endowment to be able to provide scholarships and maybe add another faculty member. Because, all universities and all education budgets are being slashed. So we're trying to be a great alumni association. So I had a point of contention with something that came out that was drafted. I won't bore you with the details, Lucas. And all of a sudden I get two opposing opinions from people I respect. So I called a meeting for next Tuesday for 30 minutes. And they said, what's this meeting for? I said, because I'm facilitating two different opinions. Well, what do you want to do? I said, that's not leadership. Leadership is bringing the two parties together for 30 minutes. And at the end of it, if we can't come to a consensus, we're going to let the director of the school make the final decision because I'm a volunteer.
There you go.
So that's the kind of synergies that you have to have in respectful leadership management styles.
Well, and that sounds like somebody who comes from a point of wisdom in working with boards.
Yeah, I do. My filters have kind of gone away because I don't have a board or members that I have to, especially in the political world we live in. I happen to be an independent. So if I have somebody from the left or the right with different opinions, and what do you think, David? Well, I think we should get all together and talk about it some more. And you got to be bipartisan. So now I'm a little more filterless, and it drives my wife crazy. But the good news is we kind of believe in the same sort of things. And that's hard if you don't.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, all of that, I think, points back to this idea of listening, inclusivity. You have to have some diversity in the room to be able to sort of gather up all of the best of opinions, and then putting that through. I read an article that you were talking about this type of inclusivity actually increases the bottom line. Can you tell us a little bit about, how we make all of that increase the profits?
Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit, and I'll just elaborate a little bit as well. In the association world, as you're brainstorming about how to increase membership, retain members, and provide value, right? Everybody listening and watching this, Lucas, this presentation, this conversation, is involved at some level with membership recruitment, retention, member value. And when you get into these brainstorming conversations, whether it's, a new membership category or a new member benefit, and what's the value to the member, and can we monetize it? Because if you don't monetize it, drive more revenue, how can you do more of the 20 things on the board's desire list when you tell them there's no money to get that done? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh,
many times. So you try to manage that balance. But at the end of the day, you can get consensus if your senior management team or your management team, depending on what level you are in the association, agree on an idea, and you could put a good 2 or 3 page business plan behind it showing revenue, expenses, time frame, a full P&L, and what's the longevity of that pro forma of that particular program. If you're in consensus, if you go into a room with 5 or 6 of you as your senior management team or your management team for a particular project, or you got a management team that's going to the CEO, the executive director, trying to pitch an idea for he or she to consider. If you come together and you're rational and you pick it apart before you present it to the bosses, whether it's a board or your CEO, executive director, you have a better chance of success. Then you also have a better chance of driving the revenue that drives the profit. I used to have conversations with my finance team saying, we're paying our salespeople too much money. And I said, okay, well, we need to change their compensation plan. I'm not going to do that. I want it unlimited. Why? Because the more they sell, the more money we have. And by the way, those 3 projects you have in membership or meetings or, advocacy, the more revenue we have. Why would I cap and demotivate a salesperson? So I got in a lot of trouble. And luckily my executive committee and most of my associations agreed with me. And so you focused on that top line that drives that bottom line.
Yeah. I share the exact same sentiment, assuming that the incentive plans have good alignment with the right growth. No need to saddle a Bronco, right? If you have the right person.
Yeah, and it's got to support the strategic plan pillars. By the way, if you don't have a strategic plan with pillars, you're in trouble. I was going to say you're kind of screwed, but I'll just say it anyways because it's clean. You got to have a strong strategic plan because you got to be able to say to board member A or to director B, either your staff or your board member, where does it support? How does it support the pillars of this association as approved by the strategic plan and the budget for the current or next fiscal year? You got to have that structure in place. Without those pillars, your house falls apart, and you're chasing the idea or the flavor of the month club, right? The board member or the staff member that says this is the greatest idea since sliced bread or ice cream with fudge sauce, and then you go down that rabbit hole, and it loses money because it never supported the pillar as approved by the executive board and the board of directors for the association.
Yeah, exactly. Grabbing the wind or shooting arrows in the dark. I mean, there's a ton of metaphors for, no focus. Absolutely. Well, David, I want to throw some, I'll call them lightning round questions at you. We'll go from more serious to less serious, maybe.
Oh, good.
In general. But tell us, your favorite part about working within associations, and then the part that you hated the least. Because I always say there's always a part of every role that kind of makes you want to sharpen your pencil and shove it through your ear. So I mean, what were those for you? Those two ends.
Well, I'll talk about what I dislike, because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the filters are gone. And I'm not going to get fired if I say something that somebody disagrees with. But basically, if you have a member or a chairman or chairwoman, and whether you're a manager, a coordinator, you're the executive director of the association, because there's going to be a lot of different levels of folks on this, kind of watching this, right? When one of the bosses that a board member has an absolutely ridiculous, non-supportive of your strategic pillars idea, and he or she gets consensus and starts talking to their buddies, and all of a sudden there's this momentum to approve an idea that really rational, fiscally responsible board members and staff members shake their head and go no, and it gets approved, and then you have to execute against a board approved directive. I hated that. And maybe that's why, I didn't get my contract extended going forward. I'm just kidding. I was ready to retire from association management. But that's the hard part. The best part, the passion, the willingness to volunteer from the vast majority of your volunteers and your board members and your chapter presidents. When I worked for PCMA and MPI and IAEE and then the Fort Worth CVB, all of those nonprofit jobs that I had incredibly passionate people. And you know what? When you get that momentum going, that's how we got through COVID in the pandemic. We buckled down. We developed, it took us 30 days or more to develop some standards and some strategies to help our industry, the exhibition industry, get through it. And I didn't do it. I had 7 or 8 or 9, 10 incredibly bright people. And I had a director who worked for me, a VP, who drove it. And it was the best thing that I've ever been involved with in my X amount of years of association management and my Sheraton Ritz-Carlton days. Amazing. Lots of good stuff.
That passion is absolutely inspiring. I actually recently, quick story, I was up in Portland, Maine, supporting a conference, and I was there really supporting the executive director who was, driving the ship, and she had just socializing that they were going to be adding a position to help chapter development. And about halfway through the conference, she came up and she said, I just had a member come up and said, you don't have to pay me. I will do that just for this group, for this association. I'll do it for free. And I don't want the association to be burdened with the fact that you have to hire somebody and find them. I've been in this association for 20 years. I'd be happy to do it. That blew me away.
Yeah, I that's fantastic. And I had an experience this morning. I work 3 mornings a week at a food bank for a gentleman and his wife. And the gentleman was CEO of an association that I was his number 2. When he retired, he went to work for and with his wife, who's executive director of the food bank. Long story short, we have a volunteer. Her name is Wendy. She used to be homeless. She used to be one of our clients who used to come once a week and get food for her family. Now she's a volunteer because she and her husband have been able to stabilize. They both have good jobs now, and they have an apartment they live in. And she said, somebody was talking about doing something. I won't bore you with the details. And she goes, I'll do it. Tell me what to do. I'll do it. She went over in the corner. An hour and a half later, the task that Colin, my quote unquote former CEO, friend, boss, who runs the food bank part of this mission, she completed it. That's passion, because you know what? She's giving back. And on her way out today at noon, when I left, Colin, the guy in charge of the food pantry side of it, came up and he had in his bag, he had a turkey that we have limited amount to give out to families of 5, and gave Wendy a turkey and said, "Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you after Thanksgiving." Passion. She didn't have to do that. She wasn't being paid. She was a volunteer.
David, that's a fantastic
So
story.
it's heartwarming.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. You've had the opportunity, both at IAEE and just generally in your career, you visited a lot of conferences, expos, fairs. What was your favorite? Can you choose just one?
Can I give you 2 brief ones? Consumer Electronics Show. It's like, if you haven't been, kid in candy store, walking around, unbelievable. Probably 25% of those companies will not make it in the tech world moving forward, but the innovation, the creativity, Gary Shapiro and his team, he's still the president, CEO, and has been for years. Very involved in the exhibitions world when I worked for IAEE. Fantastic. Another one was AEM, Association of Equipment Manufacturers. You walk around that show, I got on, and I'm just going to say it because that happened to be the product. I got on the largest Caterpillar tractor in the world.
Yeah.
I had to go, and they let, the exhibitors, the exhibitor staff saying, come on. I want you to get up here and you sit in the driver's seat of this thing. And I had 20 steps to get up on the ladder.
This is one of those where you're not even as tall as the tires on it.
So those are the cool things, of course, I'm still very passionate and still involved in the exhibition and meetings world, all due respect aside to nonprofit C6s and C3s. That's where I really have enjoyed the passion of my hospitality meetings convention world. So those are the 2 really, for different reasons, really outstanding shows that I've been to. CES 5 or 6 times and AEM 3 or 4 times. And whenever I was invited back from a board member or to meet, with their board to talk about the advantages of very successful trade shows, I would do that.
There you go. If you're listening, put those on your expo bucket list.
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing. Well, I'll wind up with 2 more. What's something that goes on your calendar every year? First thing, you rip out the pen, personal or professional. It was always there first.
Well, now that I'm semi-retired, it's making sure that on my calendar are the proper birthdays, my 3 kids, certainly my wife, the 6 grandkids, and at least to be able to, because I'm an early morning person, 5:30 in the morning, just wake up, no alarm anymore. That's a function of getting older, I think. Lucas, and I send a text. My grandkids are all under the age of 6, so they're not really doing texts. But if I can be one of the first to wish my daughter happy birthday or happy anniversary, and then now I have 2 son-in-laws and a daughter-in-law, so you got to add their so that's really important to have that personal touch of love and friendship to family. And so now I have family, my golf friends. I have family in the association world, like David Grindle, who you had on recently, out of nowhere. I've got the food bank family now of 75 or 100 volunteers that I work with off and on every week, and that's what I make sure is on the calendar. And the professional stuff, it used to be ASAE. What are the dates? Put it on my calendar. PCMA, what are the dates? Our own conventions, i.e. MPI, put it on the calendar, and now I wake up and I look at my email and I go, I could just do Facebook for an hour.
There you go.
Or LinkedIn.
Maybe a small family of Michigan State alumni.
Well, now it's
small. Yeah.
Now it's, you got a 20, you think you go away from quotas and budgets. Now I got my co-chair and I and 20 ladies and gentlemen on subcommittees have a $20 million budget. But if we don't make 20 million by the end of 2027, fire me.
Yeah.
I've already told him by the middle of 2027, when my term is up, I'm going to go and just be a Spartan fan.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so last one. This is a standard wrap up. I'm curious, what's something that AI doesn't know about David DuBois?
Well, once again, personal privilege. Two things. Number one, when I was a kid, I used to sleepwalk. So my mother used to put a cowbell on my ankle. And when I would walk outside the bedroom and go out the back door, I would wake her up and she'd find me a couple blocks away and bring me home. That's definitely, you can't even find that in AI.
No, I don't think so. That would make it tough to get up early on Christmas morning and try to sneak down also. Yeah.
But I still have my teeth, and say that because I played or officiated ice hockey for 50 years.
Oh.
And when I was 60 years old, I retired from 25 years of officiating ice hockey. So I enjoyed that. It was mostly youth hockey. And I kept my weight down below 200, and it's more challenging now. But when you walk a golf course in the heat of Texas, you can lose a lot of lbs. So I keep walking the golf course. So those are two things that you can find out on LinkedIn about my hockey stuff, but the cowbell you'll never find.
I guess not. That's well, thank you for sharing, David. I always have the unfortunate pleasure of closing us out, but before I do, I'd love to hear, is there somebody in your network you think our audience would benefit from hearing from?
From an association management perspective, I have high regards for leaders of ASAE people, leaders within ASAE people like Michelle Mason, of course, who's now the current CEO. A lot of respect for her. In the exhibitions and association management world, you talk about a creative gentleman that is amazing. If you can get him on, Michelle would be great too if you've not had her. Gary Shapiro with Consumer Technology Association, CES show. He is usually really good. He's written great books. And the last one is a guy named Randy Pennington, who's based in Dallas. Randy Pennington, for those of you, just look him up on LinkedIn. He wrote several versions of a book called Results Rule. And I read that book, and I used the pillars of the book, Results Rule, several times in my final interviews for the various jobs that I was blessed to secure. Randy Pennington, Results Rule. He is a great interviewer if you have the opportunity, and he does a lot of association work as well, Lucas. Yeah.
Well, 3 great pillars in our industry to sort of tip your hat to, David. I appreciate those, and I appreciate your time. So I just can't thank you enough for coming on, sharing some of your background, about yourself, your leadership style. I wish you all the best, and the new LLC and on the golf course as well. And thank you.
Yeah, a shameless plug. If I can help anybody, either whatever association management or meetings, convention, trade show work. I do pro bono work. Not too much of that, though. I still like to have a little bit of money. But let me know if I can help at all. And Lucas, thank you for your time.